With the film now available digitally, we're taking another look at 28 years later. It sees director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland reunite for the first time in a long time. They also did the original 28 Days Later together, and joining them is a very exciting cast including Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Ralph Fiennes, and newcomer Alfie Williams, who fight for their survival in the post-apocalyptic quarantined UK. But this is not your typical zombie action film. Yes, it's about death and loss, but maybe not in the way that you might think a movie like this is. Our discussion is going to be very spoilery, so this is your first and final warning. Welcome back to Quiet on Set. I'm Ewan, and I'm joined by Connor.
What's up? What's up? I'm excited to talk about one of the most interesting zombie movies that has been made since, well, the original 28 Days Later. Danny Boyle is really such an interesting director, especially when you look into his past works. Trainspotting, obviously, Slumdog Millionaire. Some of his movies have not aged the best, but just he's very interesting, very stylized filmmaker, and I feel like he just continued to develop his craft up until, I would say, the 2010s, where he made movies like Trance, and then he made Yesterday, which are both very weird, very interesting projects. Ultimately, they're not anything like this movie, 28 Years Later, which is very, very ambitious, which I didn't expect at all.
Which I think it's fair to say that this movie was made quite an impact so far on a lot of people, but it is definitely more liked by the critics and the more letterboxd side, like the cinephiles and all that, more than I'd say general moviegoers. I think the Rotten Tomatoes meter, like that one, goes quite far apart when it comes from like critics to just general audiences. What do you think? Is this because like more of the expectations people had going into it, maybe not being ready for the combination, the duo of Danny Boyle and Alex Garland? Or is it something about the film at the core that maybe people didn't connect with, like, I don't know, general moviegoers?
I mean, I think part of it is due to Alex Garland as a screenwriter. I feel like if him as a director is very different than him as a screenwriter, especially when you look at his career working with Danny Boyle, like with Sunshine and like with the original 28 Days Later. He's a very, you can tell he's at the helm of any script that he writes. Not like Aaron Sorkin, where you can tell in the dialogue itself, but the way that he explores like sci-fi concepts and world building and like infusing these concepts with like political subtext, especially political subtext involving the UK and Europe. I imagine that people going into this film expected more of 28 Weeks Later, which I do not like that film at all, but that movie is a lot more, scary zombie, goes, it is crazy, and he runs fast, and they all run fast, and it's so weird and wacky and whatever. Whereas this movie, it's very like morbid and dreary, and there's a lot of like emotional drama, and these characters are so like, they're so confused, and just because of this world and like the lack of like medicine and all this kind of stuff, they just seem so like otherworldly to a lot of people. And I feel like the weird characters, the weird pacing as well, this is not paced like a traditional thriller or like even like a horror movie of any kind. It has so many different genres and sections of the movie that it is very jarring. So I can imagine the structure of Alex Garland's script and the style of Danny Boyle's direction, I could see throwing like general audiences off like really, really hard.
I think that's maybe one of the reasons why I'm a bit lower on it than some other like of our mutuals are and other people in our team as well. Just because I think the movie was to me still quite a mess visually, and I get the reasons that is definitely a Danny Boyle style, and like in the heightened nature of like Trainspotting on being literally high, that makes a ton of sense. And this kind of broken apart way of assembling this movie together, when we don't stay with one's perspective all the time, like we get cut-ins from other movies to represent something larger. It's definitely like there to evoke something emotionally within me, when I thought this film didn't really grab me emotionally until Ralph Fiennes enters it with the whole Memento Mori part of the story. I think that to me was like the part that worked well, and the whole dynamic with Aaron Taylor Johnson, the dad, going out this community and kind of being this sort of military-esque haven that is upheld by this sort of tradition that they established for themselves, kind of ignoring the medicine isn't even like, we don't have it, we don't do it anymore, we just deal with someone quietly who's sick, like stuff like that. There's so much there, I think, that I get why people really gravitated towards it. I just thought like the way that it presented was so jarring to me that I didn't really have a great time for most of the movie, because I was annoyed by the choices, like the iPhone casing thing that we saw a lot leak during the promotion of this film as well, with like the kill cams for the zombies. To me, it was super off-putting, which I think is also intentional, because it's supposed to be this contrast of like this hyper stylized, like somewhat cool looking kill, when the point about it is these are the infected. These aren't like zombies that are brainless and mindless. They literally like give birth, and with the first kill with like the overweight infected there, they have like kids, and there's some sort of family dynamic there as well that you like break apart, that like the kid is able to pick up on, the dad doesn't care anymore. I found that stuff to be like compelling technically, but then the movie itself somewhat, like there was some sort of disconnect for me where like it didn't 100% click.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. My biggest issue, I would say, is the tones not really meshing as well as I'd like them to. Though I will say, when I first watched this movie, I did really love it, and I thought the experience of it was so worth the experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Also, on subsequent watches, I think I've seen this movie around 3 times, I think.
Oh wow, okay.
It's definitely waned on me the more time I've given it, and I think part of that is because of the shock of the original, like of watching it originally and being like, oh, this is so interesting to see, you know, this really intense like drama being infused with this really schlocky and like intense thriller, like zombie horror elements. And I loved how Danny Boyle was going back to his roots in terms of his style and just being really like sort of punk in terms of his aesthetics.
Yeah.
But like I said, it just doesn't mesh in ways that I think hurt the entire project. Because there are definitely scenes that work really well because of these genre mashups.
Yeah.
But as a whole, it ends up making that third act not only the most consistent piece of the movie, but the best part of the movie, because it finds a tone.
It calms down a bit
characters,
as well, you know?
Yeah. And there's still action in that last bit, especially near the end.
Yeah.
But it still feels in line with what's happening emotionally.
I felt more like the editing pace is kind of slowing down. Because there's this one initial scene with the mother where there's like a wide shot goes into a close-up into that. In like 10 seconds, we cut like 10 times. And it was so jarring that I felt like this scene didn't need to be cut apart. I don't know why it was fractured there. And there's the other moment when he confronts him, the son confronts him about like him cheating. He gets like smacked across the face and then like basically kicks out the dad out of the room with the mother. And that scene to me, when he's like making his fist over the like knife and holds it, was to me, the way it was like cut to that, like the close up of him like clenching his fist, felt like an R, like the R for me. It was it was pretty laughable. Like I had to hold back on my initial watch and on the rewatch slightly bit. I don't know. I took it a bit more seriously this time around, but it read like as laughable, which maybe you could, I don't know, maybe that's my fault that I'm not taking the scene seriously, but that whole dynamic and some of the hoops we jump through with the mother just being totally out of it while he like carries her like really far across the thing over the water and then up on the hill, she's like, wait, I shouldn't be out here, we shouldn't be, like, obviously she's sick, but it's also like pretty convenient how that whole trip before we get to Ralph Fiennes plays out. I think it picks up a bit more when we get the Swedish guy who joins them along, because it feels a bit more like realistic of what's going on. But like there's the one moment where they fall asleep and a zombie crawls and she takes it out, and like we wake up, we cut to the morning, and it also cuts in her killing it, which I thought, like, why do we need to also see that when we already got like what's going, like that ellipsis of not showing us would have worked better for me. And I think there's like a ton of these like little choices that are not adding up that undercut, I think, what it was going for, to also like be about death so much, and then also show it so much, when I thought the overall message was like there's different kinds of death, and it insisted on showing us every single one of them. But it didn't show us, for example, for the mom, how like he throws a head into like there's something that we leave out because we have an attachment to that character, and you could have done that the same thing with like killing the zombie, killing the infected. Keep that naming the infected, you know. It's not what they are, right? They're not zombies in this universe, right? I'm right about that. They're not called zombies in this, right?
Yeah, they're not. There's the Swedish soldier calls them zombies, but
Yeah.
I believe that like Danny and Alex usually correct people when they mention zombies.
Exactly, and now because the world has evolved, I think that's also something that I think people connected to, that quarantine. That in the second one, right, it was teased that the infected have reached Paris and they've nuked it, so that's kind of been dealt with on the mainland of Europe, but the UK has just been quarantined off and has basically been left by them, like to themselves, and the world has kind of moved on, which I think there's like there's a 5-year difference from the first one to the second film, 28 weeks later, obviously, in that way. So not a 5-year gap there, but then in this sequel, from the second to this third one, it took 18 years to get made, and it's 27 years later. So by the time, like the time in this movie should be around 2030, right? If the first one is also set in 2003. And I feel like we don't see some sort of real difference from the outside world. It really is just a glimpse through that character who comes in, which I found to be a wonderful asshole. He was great to like eventually see killed. But there's not a lot of characters in here. It's really just basically like 5, and that's it. Like people who, and the alpha is more of a character than like some of the side characters that briefly pop up. Did you have like a favorite moment or like a favorite character interaction, something that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention this earlier. I know you mentioned that you weren't a fan of the sort of 360 like iPhone rig like headshots and the kills and everything. I do agree with you that like the way the film treats violence is very inconsistent. Violence and death is very inconsistent. But I do love the fact that like when you see the camera rig they had on set and you see how they used it, to me it's just so cool. Like it's such a cool idea, despite the fact that it's kind of clunky.
Yeah,
it looks like so interesting. Like I can't. It's really cool imagining like Danny being like, oh yeah, we have to, if we're gonna make another movie in this series, we have to find a way to make it look maybe not shitty, but like worse than like a traditional digital camera.
Yeah. But also insist on having every sunset and sunrise film that like the skies like upwards always look beautiful on the backdrop, or like the flowers who have overgrown this sort of like just back to like nature's in very tall grass. There's a lot of that in there that is then filmed on shitty iPhone like cameras. But it still looks stunning because like at the core of it, right, there's this pureness that is still around in nature, even if you film it on like older stuff, which I think maybe takes away from it, not just because it's a pretty like really expensive camera that it looks great, but at its core, like I think I get like maybe that was not the intention, but that's something that I felt that it worked to the benefit of like cutting out all of the bullshit of like making it look pretty to just have the essentials there.
No, I totally agree, and that's like honestly that's one of my favorite parts of the movie is the not like I like how it looks personally. I like how he uses the camera, but also just the fact that like the fact that he uses an iPhone to film this movie and how it plays into the themes of the movie, and like how it like plays into, you know, him sort of going back to his roots in a way, but in a way where he's still using like a modern piece of technology, but he's still trying to like go away from the really expensive digital filmmaking he's been doing for the past like decade. I think that's like a really interesting aspect of it. Though I will say, you mentioned the like the father and son dynamic. As much as I really love the first little like adventure they go on the island, or off the island, I guess, in the first half. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson is really not great in this movie. That is one thing I
Hmm.
will say. I don't know how you feel about him. I feel like almost every movie I've seen him in, he like just rubs me the wrong way. I just the way he delivers lines. I like the fact that he's not putting on like another like American accent in this, obviously, because it's not set in America. But like he still always feels very performative to me. I
Yeah.
never get a lot of
I
genuine
get the
emotion from him.
same feeling. This feels a bit more up his alley though. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That like he stood out to me in other projects a bit more. He is a bit stiff in parts, but to me that was fine because I also thought this is my reputation catching up with me. I think the kid didn't like it didn't work for me, and not his issue. I think some of the lines and stuff that he did was just like that person didn't represent what was going on. Like on a deeper level, I think that like character has obviously the biggest arc, and it didn't leave an impact on me. I think the outside circumstances of it all, the larger picture is more interesting than the individual stories, which is disappointing in a movie that is like so focused on this sort of trauma and all of that, that like some of the hardships that end up going through like the infected are, to me, in a way more compelling than maybe some other stuff like the alpha, or the woman giving birth to like a human baby, which I thought then these infected still have sex, right, when they can give birth. Then I was also wondering if the first couple of infected that they kill with like the husband, the guy and the woman, and then the kid that's there, if that was also a like infected baby that actually ended up being infected because maybe they bit it, or was that just a like kid that turned? Do they still grow up? Like a lot of these questions that linger, that I think are really interesting, that you could definitely explore a bit more. But I love how much they focus on just death being the sort of, there's different kinds of death, and in a world that is so filled with death, you can still have something that is peaceful in like that final thing that is so cruel. Just how you go about it and how you interact with it. And I was quite moved by that moment this time around with the mother. I think it worked really well. And then it's really jarring because like the next moment he places it on it, the alpha's there and they have to go down. A lot of the transitions in the movie don't really work for me. Like when they wake up the next morning and a herd of like animals like stampede through, and then the house just breaks down, so that forces them to run. Like a lot of it just feels very like plot driven,
Like
so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, a bit forced, yeah. And I mean it ends on that in the epilogue as well. It's like, oh, we gotta have this new set of characters interact with our lead to set up what's coming next, and it feels really really jarring as well, which I think that it's like obviously very intentional, that like these are so out there. But I minded that a bit less on a rewatch, honestly, knowing to just get that like to get a jump on that before it jumps down onto you, and they just have a good old time slashing through all of the infected there.
When the Jack O'Connell character comes in, and he's basically that Jimmy Savile character that Alex Garland is referencing, I find Alex Garland's references of like history, whether it be like Brexit, classic British history, and like militarism and imperialism, all those kind of things, and especially Jimmy Savile as a person. You know more about him than I do, but obviously like a character like Jack O'Connell, like especially how young he was when the outbreak started, would have not known everything that would come out like if the outbreak didn't happen, about him being a horrible person and everything. So him idolizing him in this way and basically becoming him as an adult makes total sense. So I think that reference works. And I really do like how the archival footage is edited. And a scene I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned before, it's like one of my favorite moments of the movie, when they start editing archival footage of like not only like in British military, but also like classic like medieval like rows of like archers and all this kind of stuff, and like showing like the history of like not only Europe and like imperialism and that era of like history, but just like just militarism in general, and showcasing that against this new context of this quarantined island and like the outbreak and everything.
And I'm not really that much more familiar with Seville. I'm just reading through his Wikipedia page a bit closer now, and it says like that even like there was a Louis Theroux special that he did in like 2000, where it was about that, and apparently like a stand-up comedian in like the late 80s called him a pedophile. So like there was stuff probably known, but like for someone who grows up with that TV personality, I think it also makes a point that like you don't see the uglier side of someone, and he seems to be front and center with everything horrible. You're just ignoring around it, and you're making an entertaining spectacle around it. I think that's like supposed to be the point of that character, if I'm like trying to reach what Garland was going for. But also maybe we're gonna get a closer look at like how fucked up he, like in this fucked up world that he grew up in, how that affected him and all the people he ended up interacting with, and created some sort of blonde wig club that is also I actually didn't pay attention to if they're around the same age as he is, if maybe he like ended up recruiting a bunch of like other kids that maybe were like all also left and somehow got out. I don't know.
See, I don't know, only because not Garland. Danny Boyle has a history of like casting like older actors to play younger characters. So I don't know if he meant Jack O'Connell to be like pretty young, because like how he must have been like, I don't know, in that flashback they showed him as like maybe like 8 or 9 or maybe 10. I don't really know. I'm bad with like seeing like how like a child would be, especially in like a movie like this where it's like that first bit happens so fast. But he can't be like more than like 30 in the context of the movie, I imagine. Or not 30. He has to be 30 because 27 years. Or 28 years, sorry. I think I've said 27 years in the past. That's not what I meant.
Rounding down. No, he must be in his mid-30s, I'd say. Like he's definitely not 40 yet, that for sure. But I think it's also that like juvenile energy that he gives off, that I don't know how you age in this sort of world where he remained maybe a bit younger in the way that he goes about like this, because he's obviously emotionally stunted but then grows up to be physically bigger. And then it's kind of the inverse with Spike, who's like forced to be even older than the other kids who go out when they're like 14, 15, and he goes out when he's 12. So for him to interact, I think that the like kind of back and forth you could have that with the mirroring of this 12-year-old now interacting with someone who went into this world, like came into this world forcefully around the age, maybe a similar age or maybe slightly younger, to see like the influence that interacting with this Johnny character is going to have on Spike. I assume that's going to be the focus of the Bone Temple, and that, like if they do that right, that sounds to me pretty intriguing. So I'm looking forward to this, even though I ended up on just like a 6 out of 10 for the film. Honestly, some moments with Ralph Fiennes especially, just I think he's won an Oscar, right, for best performance at some point. He must have at least one.
I believe so, yeah.
Maybe for The English Patient, I don't even know, or for Schindler's List. But he is just so incredible. Like he was great in Conclave as well last year. So I'm really glad to have him in this story, because he adds a lot to it. I think Jodie Comer is also amazing, although there's limitations to her character of just playing perplexed a bit, but then also being slightly aware, like her moment of definitely having this sort of final moment for her, to the way she interacted with her son there, I think was quite moving as well. I think great performances like from these two specifically, from Jodie Comer and Ralph Fiennes. And Ralph Fiennes is just also the best written character in the story to me. It's maybe because even though he's burning up people and stacking them, he seems to the most well-adjusted, which is so crazy to think. But he seems to be the most normal person around. I don't know, but yeah,
he's my favorite character.
Yeah,
that's why I'm hoping he's in that second one, man. If he's in it, I'm gonna be so excited. But if he's not, I'm gonna be
this is not a temple, right? This is not the Bone Temple. So I'm thinking that maybe this other new character, Jim,
I thought he called it
the. Oh, did he call it the Bone Temple?
I think he called it the Bone Temple.
Okay, well then I'm just full of I'm bullshitting them.
No, I get what you mean though, because like, what else could it be? Like, why would they go backwards? You know, like I don't understand.
But I think the guy was hung up and had like something written inside of him that was probably them, right? So they interact with like, but then maybe Aaron Taylor Johnson, like the dad. I don't know if that Jamie character ever interacted with these Jimmies, the blondes. So I don't know a lot, but he wasn't willing to talk about like the flame and like the doctor. So wouldn't put it past him if they ever interacted that he also was holding back information there. But I'm intrigued. I'm looking forward to this next one, and it's not even it's like less than half a year away. So definitely, something to look forward to. And I assume the third one is then releasing later in 2026. Maybe I like that approach. You know, it's better than Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse promising that next year we get it, and it was like, well, then we're getting it in 2028 or something. It was 7? No, I think it was 2028, like the release date that they said for that one. So yeah, it's this makes sense for the series to like basically knock it all out and not be like tied down to the individual success of all that, but basically pitch a 3-part story that they hopefully get to fully get into like the stuff that they want to tell. And I feel like from this first one I can tell that they have ambitions in the directions that they want to go in. And even though I didn't love this first one, I'm looking forward to where they go next.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I'm definitely more positive than you. At first I gave it like a really high rating. It was like a 9 or something, because I was really high on it. Like I said, like when I first was talking about it early on in the review, I was mentioning how like shocked I was at how ambitious a movie like this is, and how Danny Boyle's like finally back in his bag. But having seen it a couple more times, I definitely have like felt less positive about it. Though I still really like it. I would say it's like either like an 8 or a 7 for me. I'm just gonna land in an 8 because I'm just gonna keep with how strong I was on that first watch. But I agree with you on a lot of things. It's definitely a mixed bag, though. I do think what works here for me really works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely curious from our audience and people watching this right now what they think, because like I said at the beginning, opinions are really all over the place for this one, and especially because there is that horror tie-in. Like some people connect with that way differently, and when you have a bit more like of an emotional stake and drama with like in there, then people like also split further apart of what they like and what they don't like in this type of movie. So definitely let us know what you thought of it. Again, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Connor's at an 8 out of 10, and I think it's definitely a movie worth checking out. Hopefully you did watch it before we completely spoiled the whole movie for you now. But if you haven't yet, I think it's one of the films that is one of the must-watches of the year, at least if you don't completely hate horror and like these zombie-ish types movies. Then I think it's time well spent. But thanks so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.
See you guys.